Hi class, today I'm talking about supervision and also just some ethical standards when in regards to treating couples and families and things of that nature. I wanted to start off with supervision. I believe we are talking about chapter 9 from your textbook. And I wanted just to kind of go over the importance of supervision. So as you get into this program and you get closer to finding a practicum site, what that is that's going to be the site where you do your hours in order to graduate. And so you have to accomplish so many hours in order to proceed with graduation. That doesn't matter if you're MFT or going the route of LPCC, you have to complete hours. Now, in that journey, you're considered a trainee. And so as a trainee, you obviously are still in your master's program, so you're not post-grad. You can only apply for positions that are for trainees. You can't apply for licensed positions or even associate positions. You need to make sure it is understood that you're a trainee. Our site, or not our site, our school will approve your site. There's probably some sites that are already approved, but we fully understand with this course being online, that there are sites all over the place, even potentially all over the world. So we will make sure that you have a site that is approved. And then with that, you have supervision. Now, as a trainee, because you are post-grad, you will be under more supervision than a person who is an associate. And then, of course, as a licensed person, you don't need supervision. So as a trainee, you need 1 unit of supervision for every 5 clients that you see. Now, you need 2 units of group for every 5 clients that you see. And what group is like when you have more than 2 therapists together, and there's one person that supervises that group. Now, in order for your hours that you do to count, you have to have supervision, and that's why your site has to be approved by the correct by the university to make sure you're at the right place so that your hours matter. When you're on a journey to get 3,000 hours, every hour counts, and you want to make sure all the hours count. There's a little bit of a difference with licensed professional counselors. Their hours that they do post-grad or pre-graduation don't count towards licensure, whereas an LMFT, their hours pre-graduation do count towards licensure. So all that means is if you're going both directions, if you're trying to pursue both licenses, is that one, you'll get you'll complete the LMFT before you'll complete the LPCC. Okay? If you're only going the LPCC route, you just don't get to count those hours pre-graduation, which I'm sorry, that's unfortunate. I don't make those rules. The Board of Behavioral Sciences does. I find it a little silly because I don't get why. But regardless of that, you still get supervision. Now, your supervisor is there to help you and to make you feel comfortable, and to come alongside you in that journey. They shouldn't be someone who's hypercritical of you or makes you feel uncomfortable. They should be someone that supports you and encourages you as you are learning and you're still in school. Like, we don't have expectations that you should know everything, or a good supervisor shouldn't have expectations that you know everything. I think the thing, obviously, like with any working relationship or anyone who's in like an authority role over you, you want to make sure you feel comfortable. They're not making you feel uncomfortable. They're not doing anything that feels like a boundary crossing or inappropriate. And if there's ever a time you do feel uncomfortable, you need to talk to your practicum teacher about it. And that's a class you will have eventually, because that person can like help you, and or the person who's in charge of placement, which I think that's Dr. Gregorian Routon, who's in charge of this journey with you as you work with practicum. Just because we don't want our students to be in any situation where they feel like it's not right. And your supervisor shouldn't make you feel that way. So if you're feeling that way, or you feel like your supervisor is doing illegal or unethical things, we really advise that maybe that's not a good site for you. We need to make a transition. Okay. Now, your supervisor should be signing off on your hours, which are sheets that you'll get from the Board of. So those sheets are things that you'll have signed off on your hours. There's different methods of tracking your hours. There's computer methods that kind of help keep things like more clean. You can do it by hand still. But that is something that your supervisor will sign off on. So your supervisor shouldn't be holding your hours over your head. That would be not okay. It would be unethical. Like, if you don't do this, I'm not going to do that. That shouldn't be the kind of relationship that you have. So, those are just things to be mindful of. How I've seen supervision as a person who received supervision for years is my supervisor was always honest with me, but was very kind and very comfortable. So I felt like I could talk about a lot of things with him. And I learned a lot from him. And so I really valued that time under his supervision. And I hope for the people I supervise, they feel the same way. I'm very supportive. I'm here for them, not only with their clients, but like to some degree personally, as this is a journey that challenges us in a lot of different ways. And you want to feel comfortable to be able to talk about countertransference or talk about issues that you're having with your clients and how it's affecting you. We are humans and we are affected. So you want a good copacetic relationship with your supervisor. I'm not saying you have to be at birthday parties or those kinds of things. I'm just saying, like, you want to get along and like a managerial type role in a job, you want to be able to get along well with the person who's in charge of you. And I definitely think that's possible. So just some things to be mindful of. Also too, talking about, seeing families. Now, we want to make sure we handle things so that everyone knows that they have the right to confidentiality, informed consent, all those kinds of things. So we hold a lot of responsibility in treating families and couples and children. People are really trusting us with their personal lives and their very serious outcomes potentially. And so it's something that we should obviously take seriously and be mindful of. We are expected to follow an ethics code. And so I wanted to make sure that we are talking about those things. So we have a responsibility to the client. Our client, as the focus of therapy shifts from individual to the family system, a new set of ethical questions arise. Whose interests should the family therapist serve? Is it the family? To whom and for whom does the therapist have primary loyalty and responsibility? By agreeing to get involved with the family, the members can generally be expected to place higher priority on the goals of the family than their own personal goals. So, sometimes we'll have clients where you see them individually and then they're like, oh, can you see me and my spouse? This is where it can get sticky. Sometimes, and this is where it's an ethical issue, which ethical issues sometimes can feel not so black and white, like sex with your therapist, wrong, obvious. Should I see a couple and see an individual? Well, will it work? Will everyone feel heard? Who's going to be the primary client? Can you go back and forth and still be objective for the couple and objective for your client? Sometimes we take sides. We're humans. We hear one side of the story. Now, I've come to learn over many years that there is two sides to every story. And some people's perception of themselves is very, very wrong. Very wrong. So, I can be pretty objective, but then I have clients where they're like, oh, I really want you to see me and my boyfriend. I'm like, oh, heck no. Like, your boyfriend's the worst. Like, that's what I think to myself. I don't say that out loud. But I'm like, I don't want to see your boyfriend because I don't like your boyfriend. But I wouldn't ever try to see them as a couple because I already know how I feel, right? Now, your clients as individuals can invite people to their sessions, assuming they clear it with you first. Like, maybe they want to have a session with their mom and it's just one session and that's all it is. Of course, you have to go over limits of confidentiality and things like that with whoever they bring. But it's not a forever situation, whereas couples therapy is usually way more than just one session, right? And so we just want to make sure that our clients understand, like, our role changes when we add more people. And so if they're looking for you just to be aligned with them and stay on their side and be on their team, then that's not what's going to happen. And so you just have to be very clear. a lot of times, sorry, I'm at my office today, so I'm like, putting my drink down. A lot of times with, couples, we do things like no secrets policy, and that's because how beneficial is it if you find out some really hard secret from one person in the relationship, and then you can't tell the other person, and that could be very counterintuitive, like, what am I doing here? Okay, so that's where we have this no secrets policy, because sometimes as a couple you may like split them up, or even a family, you might be like, today I'm going to see mom, tomorrow I'm going to see son, tomorrow I'm going to see daughter, next day I'm going to see mom, whatever, just to get a better understanding of what's going on without all the people in the room. That's not uncommon. We can do those things. However, a no secrets policy is important, because if people are asking you to keep secrets and we're not able to talk about the real issues, then like, who are we really helping here? Like, it isn't helpful. And so we always encourage like clinicians to have some sort of no secrets policy for families and or couples, so that everyone knows what's expected of them, what to say, what not to say. Maybe someone's wanting to tell a secret and needs your help in doing so. That would be great. You could be the person to do that for them or to help them with that. But we want to make sure we're establishing that the family, the couples do have a right to confidentiality within reason. Obviously, mandated reporting still applies. We don't want anyone to be harming themselves or anybody else, all those things. And, we want to make sure that we are handling this with the utmost care and concern. Okay. So when seeing families, we want to just be making sure that we are clear on like who our role is. Now, if you see a whole family and then the family therapy is kind of done and you stop seeing them, and then let's say parent calls and is like, I really want you to see Susie, the daughter. You could see Susie, but that might mean that you're not going to see the family anymore, because now the role has changed. Like, if you see Susie just by herself and she just needs individual therapy, then you are keeping Susie's secrets and we're not really applying the no secrets policy anymore, right? So we just want to make sure we're clear with our clients' expectations, because if they're ever going to need family therapy again, you may have to refer them out. And that sometimes is a problem for people. So maybe they'd rather you refer another therapist for Susie, right? These are things that, again, sound very strange or maybe a little lame, but very helpful when it comes to navigating family therapy, okay? And couples therapy. We want to make sure, like, if you see, Steve and Joan together, then you want to make sure that maybe Steve and Joan are doing great. They're, they trust you. And so they're like, hey, Steve really needs a therapist. Could you keep seeing Steve? Well, that means I can't see you and Joan together anymore. So as long as you're aware of that and you're making those calls with them and they're able to make those calls, then everyone's going to be on the same page and there's not going to be issues. But we don't want to see Steve and Joan, then go back. Because what if then Steve discloses something and then you can never tell Joan, right? Like, it's just uncomfortable. You don't want to be in those situations. Believe me, I have been in situations where I'm like, this was sticky. I one time was disclosed of a spouse cheating. I was seeing a husband and wife separately, not as a couple, but separately, 2 individual clients. And they knew, right? They knew I was. So it wasn't a secret or an accident. But where it got messy was husband disclosed he's cheating on wife. Well, I'm hearing wife concerned that husband's cheating on her. So I'm having to contain all that because I can't tell. I'm held to confidentiality. They're being treated as 2 separate people. So I'm having to contain all that and try to deal with the moving forward. And it was so hard because I couldn't say anything. Very messy situation, not something I recommend. Not so much that anything bad happened as a result of that, luckily, but it was a lot for me to contain. And like I tell you guys, you are human. There's issues that will come up and you'll make mistakes or whatever. You're not perfect. But we want to try to be as responsible as we can. We might think, oh, I can handle it, no big deal, no big deal. Well, you don't know what people are going to say, what bombs they're going to drop on you. Then what, right? It's like, that's the part, like, people are unpredictable. And so That's just the stuff you have to be conscientious of. I never would have guessed that was going to happen. I didn't know that was going to happen. But then when it did, I was like, are you kidding me? Now I have to be so straight faced and so like, you know, it was just not a great position to be in. You know, it sounds like an ethical nightmare, which it was. So we just want to make sure that we're clear with people, our role, what our job is in relationship with that. And a lot of times people are that way. One, because they love you and they trust you and you know all their stuff. So it's like you're the family therapist for the whole family, which, okay, great. But it's understanding like I have to keep, like once we start breaking up the family, I have to contain what I know. And I don't know if we can ever go back to being a family session. Okay. So hopefully if you have questions on that, please don't hesitate to ask, but just something good to know. You know, you want to make sure too, with money, with clients, that they fully know the expectations of them. Oftentimes we have private practice types forms, but just make sure that money is always very clear so that's not messy. Some of your facilities you work at, there may be no exchange of money. Maybe it will happen at the beginning. Maybe you won't be part of that process at all, but just make sure everyone knows what they're signing up for. That's very important in our line of work. Also making sure you advertise appropriately, making sure your experience is listed accurately. If you're a trainee, make sure that's listed. Your supervisor has to be on any sort of documentation. You know, same with an associate. As you become licensed, you don't have to worry about that. But we don't want any sort of false advertising or alluding to us being something that we actually are not. So we're on week 6, almost done. We'll have one more live lecture, and then you have the week off with live lecture because we are finishing our critical assignments.